Athletics, there's power in it, and there's power to make a real impact if you choose to. I respect so much when people with that power and that influence make it a part of their platform and make it important to do something bigger than what they're doing on the field.
Welcome to Sports Mom Rapport, where we support and connect with moms of athletes while sharing helpful advice from each other and some guest experts along the way. This is Tara.
And I'm Destiny. Thank you for joining us as we highlight you incredible moms. Today we're going to be talking with Tammi Carr.
She is such an inspiration. Tammi exhibits such strength and is an ultimate sports mom whom I truly admire.
She comes from a family of athletes, including Hall of Famers and legendary coaches.
I imagine those family members blazed a trail for her sons who are tremendous athletes themselves.
The Carr family strives daily to overcome loss and turn hardship into a positive for others. Their story is one that I cannot wait to hear more about.
Let's not wait any longer. Please welcome Tammi. We're just so honored to have you with us. Will you start off by introducing yourself and introduce your family a little bit for us?
Sure. My name is Tammi Carr. My husband is Jason, and we have 3 boys. CJ is 18 and going to be a senior this year. Tommy is 15 and almost 16. He'll be a sophomore. And then we have Chad, who is forever 5, and he is in heaven. He passed away from a brain tumor almost 8 years ago, but we are always a family of 5, and we live in Saline, Michigan.
Thank you for sharing that. That's a beautiful way of introducing your family, and we remember Chad and the attention you have brought in such a positive light to remember him. Let's dive a little bit into your background, where you were raised, and your family's passions.
I actually was raised in Miami, Florida. My father played football at the University of Michigan and then played in the NFL for 4 years and ended his career with the Miami Dolphins on the 1972 undefeated team. People often think about our family. They're like, oh, yeah, Lloyd Carr's grandson. They talk about CJ and Tommy, but my dad was actually in 2 Super Bowls and holds the record for interceptions at Michigan. So he sometimes gets left behind, which is kind of comical, but a lot of that athleticism comes from that side as well. After his career ended with a knee injury, he stayed in Miami area, and I was born there and raised there and had never seen snow until I came to the University of Michigan as a freshman. I went to the Atlanta area after I graduated from Michigan with a double major in communications and psychology. And I moved to Atlanta. I worked for Turner Sports for about 6 years. I did the Olympics in Nagano, Japan. I did Goodwill Games in New York. I was on the production side of things and produced features for the Olympics in Nagano. They had actually hired a group right out of college. They wanted a group of young people. They hired 6 of us to become this young production unit that would go to Nagano and cut their teeth in doing sports features. That's kind of my background. And then my husband was a college football coach himself. When we got engaged, he was a coach at Central Michigan University. So I moved from Atlanta, Georgia to Mount Pleasant, Michigan. That was a big move. I worked for CMU Public Television, and the first show I produced was on the tuberculosis issue with the deer population in Michigan. So it was quite an adjustment from going from the Olympics to that. Then my husband actually decided when we looked to starting a family that he wanted to get out of the coaching profession. He was obviously raised in it as his father was the head coach at Michigan for 13 years. And he wanted to have more of an active day-to-day role with the kids. So we ended up moving back to the Ann Arbor area. I got into fundraising because I didn't want to do television anymore. I guess that's how things went.
That's quite the journey. Thank you so much for being here, Tammi, and just sharing a little bit about your family and your upbringing. And I actually did know that your dad was also a Hall of Famer. And it is funny that you married into an athletic family, but you have such a strong athletic background yourself and then working with the Olympics. It's incredible. I love to hear that story and how Jason decided that coaching wasn't the area that he wanted to stay in. And it all came full circle and brought you back to Michigan. It's a beautiful story. What was it like growing up with such a strong sports family for both you and Jason? And how do you think those experiences were similar or differed or influenced how you have raised the boys?
My father was finished playing football when I was born, but he owned football newspapers. He owned Dolphin Digest, Steelers Digest. He did like different publications for different NFL teams. So we were integrated into that world, especially with the Dolphins and living in Miami. I played soccer and softball my entire life. I have two brothers who are younger than me. I'm probably more of the sports person in the family. I loved sports. I played at a high level, thought about playing in college. I had several Division II opportunities with soccer and was walking on here at Michigan, but then got hurt again and decided I was going to take the traditional student route. Jason grew up a little differently with his father being a coach at Michigan basically he moved here when he was in second grade. And that's not normal in the coaching world too, to be in the same place your entire life. I think he's kind of an anomaly, but I think that was really great for him. He didn't have the moving around, but at the same time, the coaching profession is tough. And his dad was not as present for all of those things. That he won the state championship his senior year, and his dad was coaching at Ohio State. So, those types of things. My dad coached my teams. I played Little League baseball with the boys till I was 16 years old, and he was my coach. His dad did not get the chance to do that. And so I think that that's part of the reason why Jason made that change in his profession. He wanted to do that. He wanted to have an active role. And we both are strong believers in what sports can do for you as a person beyond just the field or the court or whatever it may be, the lessons that it teaches you. And we were never going to be parents that pushed our kids in any direction. But I will say, at least for CJ and Tommy, they came out of the womb wanting a ball. They didn't like toys. Their first words were both ball after mama and dada. Tommy, I have pictures of him at the age of 18 months. The kid could hit a ball being pitched to him left-handed. They loved it. That's all they wanted to do. We never knew what to tell people to buy them for gifts because we had every sort of ball, bat. I mean, how many of those things can you get at that age? When Chad came around, he was a little bit different. He loved toys, he loved music, he loved art. So whereas he was our third boy, we actually had a whole different environment. We had to actually buy toys for the first time. And we always joke that had he still been here, it would have been interesting to know what direction he would have gone in. With CJ and Tommy, it was pretty clear from day one. We never would have pushed them. They pushed us to allow them to do things. And Chad, it would have been a little different story.
So funny how different all of our kids are. You think about their interests, their involvement, they're being raised in the same household, and some of them are sports oriented, some are arts and culture and performing. And it's just so lovely how all of our kids are so different. But your family definitely has such a strong background in athletics.
Definitely. Totally a sports family, but everybody's different. They all have different loves. That's pretty cool how you were both raised in such prominent sports families, yet very different, and how our upbringing shapes us. As in, Jason didn't have his dad present when he was playing as much. And I understand that's one of the reasons why I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. My mom, she worked from home, but she was always working. So you definitely recognize what you might be lacking and how you want to be for your own family.
I was just thinking about that as well. I think just what we experience as kids influences the trajectory that we want to take. Your mom worked from home, Tara, but she worked a lot. And that influenced the role that you wanted to play in your family once you had children. And being married to a former collegiate coach, I can relate to Jason's upbringing specifically, and how it is hard because you watch your significant other or your parent giving so much time to other children, and then maybe sometimes not having them at home can feel like a void, or you can look at it as they are providing for these other kids and athletes something that maybe they don't have at home.
Yeah, that's exactly how Lloyd was. If you talk to any of his former players, he was an incredible coach who was a developer of men. And he was present as often as he could be, but in the coaching world, the hours are what they are. Mm-hmm. I mean, the recruiting, all of those things, it doesn't allow for you to just be at everything. I think that Jason just knew he wanted that hands-on experience. And he is an incredible father. And I will tell you, the success that CJ and Tommy, they've had as quarterbacks is largely due to their father. I mean, we have film sessions every night in this house because that's what they all want to do. He is their coach, really. That would not have happened had he been still coaching at the collegiate level.
That's pretty amazing how Jason is so hands-on and able to offer all his coaching knowledge. What was it like marrying into another family with sports figures? And you must have been dating Jason while you were in school, while his father was coaching at Michigan, no?
Well, we actually were just friends. His dad was the defensive coordinator then. I guess we dated for like 5 minutes when I was a freshman and he was a junior. But we remained friends throughout my time at Michigan. I had met his father from my father, actually, when I was like 10 years old, which is just kind of crazy. But when I was in Atlanta, he was a graduate assistant coach at Vanderbilt. So we ended up actually running into each other at the national championship game in California randomly. And that's how we reconnected. We had both graduated and he was a graduate assistant coach at Vanderbilt then. He recruited the Atlanta area. And so he would come down and that's kind of how we reconnected. But by the time we were dating, his dad was the head coach. So that was different. It was always funny to me because I love Michigan football, right? I grew up a Michigan fan. It was just so much more personal to him. And I recognized that very quickly. Like he was a coach himself at Central Michigan when we got engaged, when I moved up to Mount Pleasant. If Michigan lost, it was like it ruined everything for a long time. For the whole week, it was just personal and people were critical about his father. And then I began to adopt that same mentality. You become defensive and protective of people that you care about. That was a different thing. I think that was something I wasn't used to. You know, you listen to sports radio and I would just be like, how can they say these things? And Jason had experienced that his entire life. So it was a learning curve for me. He could laugh things off. There wasn't social media then, but sports talk radio and things of that nature. I had to learn that. But then when his dad got out of coaching, it was also an interesting, when he retired, for us, it changed our entire perspective on Michigan sports. Because yes, I want them to win. And I love Michigan, and so does Jason. But it wasn't family anymore. It wasn't your livelihood or your loved one. So you wanted it to win, but it didn't ruin your entire weekend when that necessarily didn't happen. So that was interesting and an evolution for me, for sure.
You could breathe a little more. There was a little bit of separation.
Completely. And now having like 2 quarterback sons, I live it on the other side, right? Those experiences are now how I feel when they are playing. It really is different. I think people who are traditional fans, they don't live it the same way as, when it's your family.
Perhaps it prepared you for your sons and their upcoming careers as well.
That's possible, except I think when it's your child, it's a whole nother level. I am the crazy, panicky mom. I think it's also having lost a child. I think that anxiety around watching your children in a sport that isn't not dangerous is different. I think I handle things differently than a lot of football moms. And I give myself that grace because I can't help it. I want to put them in a bubble. And yet they've both decided this path that, they're talented and they are blessed. And I know it's what they're supposed to do. But as their mom, it's hard. I'm not going to lie. It's hard.
No doubt. Totally different when it's your own child. Going back to you needing to learn to communicate during Michigan's games and all, at least you had your communication background. Do you think that helped you or not?
There was no social media when Lloyd was coaching, which I think is a blessing for him. He would have hated that. He barely knows how to turn on a computer. God love him. It would have been really hard. He decided right around as all those things were changing, that was the time to retire. He has a lot of other interests outside of sports. And now he's been able to be engaged with his grandsons and his granddaughters as well and watch their events, which has been really nice and coming full circle. I think that now as a mom, I guess having that background and knowing how to speak my feelings, but at the same time, I will say I've had to learn how not to speak my feelings more often. I think that's been more important. The Twitter universe and people are really mean at times. And that mama bear comes out and you want to protect your child. I'm probably the worst in this family at that. CJ, having picked Notre Dame as the school that he will be continuing his career at and not Michigan, that was a big deal. And people were not kind. My mama bear instinct is to jump. And my son, who is 18 years old and incredible, is like, Mom, they don't matter. It's fine. He's got a different way of allowing that to just roll off his shoulders where I want to protect him. And I'm getting better at ignoring because it's just not even worth it. I think things are very different now. I'm good at communicating. That is not a problem. I just need to learn to not communicate sometimes more. If you ask my family, that's what they would say.
I'm hearing phases. It's almost like, okay, you met Jason. In that phase of your life, you saw how deeply football wins and losses impacted the family from being on the coaching side. And then the now mom phase of, okay, we are fully immersed in this. Our family dynamic has created this trajectory where our sons grew up holding a ball and not toys. And now they've decided that they want to take on this. And yes, it's natural. You go into that mama bear mode because we want to protect our kids. But at the same time, Twitter can be so mean and uplifting at the same time. It can be wonderful and it can be really hard. And what I love about this podcast is it gives moms specifically a platform to say, hey, this isn't easy. We're all in it together. We're trying to figure it out. How did Tammi Carr handle the recruitment of her son when he decided a school that did not align with their family background and where their family was alum? How can I hear that example and how can I now learn and grow from it if I'm listening to Sports Mom Rapport? So I love that you were vulnerable and said, hey, this is not easy. And I may have a communications degree, but I might not always get it right. That vulnerability is what we all need to hear. We've all gone through phases. Sometimes we handle things differently and better. And sometimes we're like, you're going to do a phenomenal job of supporting CJ at Notre Dame. And then whatever Tommy decides to do, I'm sure you will support him. I did want to ask what the recruitment was like for CJ as he decided to continue his quarterback career at Notre Dame.
It was very interesting. You'd think my husband was a college coach. He was recruited himself. We would know how things went. But this world of recruiting and now with NIL is so different. It was a major learning curve for our family. So I think about families who have no background in this and wow, because for us, it was hard. It took Jason a lot of research time, let's just say. He spent time figuring out how this process works. He was a freshman when he got his first offer, which we had no idea that that was even how things worked. It was the COVID year. In Michigan, they brought football back. They took it away. They brought football back. They took it away. Celine had made it to the regional finals, and then they canceled football. Then the governor brought football back. So we were thrust into, okay, you're going to play the regional finals in January in Michigan in the snow. The starting quarterback was sick. So CJ, as a freshman, had to play that game. Now, that was the most terrifying thing. I was a disaster. He was incredible. We didn't win, but our offense was amazing. And he led us down the field every time. And I was just like, what is happening here? I don't think we knew how good he would be. You think, okay, he's good, I guess, right? Against other eighth graders. But that was a big moment. That next week after that game, Michigan State and Michigan both offered him as a freshman. And we were blown away. Honestly, Michigan called, Coach Harbaugh called us, not CJ, which generally with recruiting, they talk to the players. But I think with our background, it was a little different. We actually did not tell CJ that Michigan had offered him, but that was his first offer. And we were like, oh gosh, all that's going to come of this is everybody, oh, he's just offered because it's Michigan and it's CJ Carr. So we just said, let's just keep this. We didn't tell him. And our plan was to just wait on things and let things evolve. And we told Coach Harbaugh that. Well, then the next day, Michigan State called. They called his coach and said, we'd like to talk to CJ. When the coach called and said, Michigan State wants to talk to CJ, We said, oh gosh, we have a problem here. So we sat CJ down and we said, so they're probably going to offer you. And when they do, you need to say, Coach Harbaugh offered me yesterday. And he was like, what do you mean? I can't say that. He didn't. And I'm like, well, actually he did. And we didn't tell you because we were trying to keep this thing under the radar. Like, that's really young. And to blow up so quickly. And he was ecstatic. And that was the beginning of the trajectory. And it went from there. And then you know how it works. You get those offers and then every Big Ten school, and then it moved to the SEC. But the thing I will say is that I think that everyone just thought Michigan and CJ Carr were a lock, including Michigan. How things were handled on both sides was very interesting. Everyone offered him, but how often they were coming to the school or calling his coach and having him call them, or it was interesting to us. And Notre Dame, Tommy Rees, who was the offensive coordinator at the time, he wanted CJ. He looked at him, he said, do we even have a chance with you? Are you going to Michigan? Like, will you just tell me? And they had connected very strongly. And he said, no, I am serious when I say my commitment is open. I'm serious. I want to figure out what's best for me. He said, okay, then I'm coming hard. And that's exactly what happened. At one point, a crystal ball got shifted from Michigan as being 100% CJ to Notre Dame. And when that happened, then all these other schools were like, oh my goodness, what is happening here? And Georgia and Alabama and LSU, it was like, oh, he is not a Michigan lock. And then it got even more insane. CJ had been to Notre Dame at that point like 5 times. And he walked in the house after he and Jason had gone for another visit. He looked at me and he said, you guys can keep making me visit all these schools, because we were taking him everywhere unofficially. Quarterbacks generally commit early because they want to build a class. So they commit oftentimes before they're technically even allowed to talk to coaches directly on the phone. So we were taking him everywhere. And he walked in his house and he said, you guys can keep taking me places. I am silently committed to Notre Dame in my head. And then I went on the next visit with him, and he had a plane ticket to go down to Alabama, Georgia, and LSU the next day. And I walked on that campus with him, and I had tears in my eyes because I know my son, and this felt like my son. I knew what that meant coming from our family, and I knew that was going to be hard, but I could tell this is where he wanted to be, and this is where he was supposed to be. So we came home, and he looked at his father and he said, Dad, I'm not getting on that plane to go down south. I know what's going to happen. They're going to offer me a bunch of money. I'm going to feel like I'm going to have to do this. And I don't want to. I want to go to Notre Dame. I looked at Jason. I said, we need to listen to him. This is his decision. We were always going to be supportive of wherever he chose. We just wanted him to make sure that he was making an informed decision. We both looked at each other and said, all right, you've visited all over. And if you're sure and you want to make this move, we're behind you. And my father-in-law was behind him. Everyone in this family, it's his. And that's what Lloyd told him. This is your recruitment. It's not my recruitment. It's not your parents' recruitment. This is yours. You need to go where it feels right for you. So that's when he committed. And that was very interesting, to say the least. We're super proud of him. I mean, it takes a lot of guts to make the decision he did. He didn't take the easy road. It doesn't surprise me because I can see him not wanting to go to school right down the street. He wants to spread his wings a little bit more. He also didn't want to go all the way down south. He likes us, thank goodness, and he'd like us to be involved. 2.5 hours is far enough. We get to be there. We get to go to Friday nights when his brother plays, and then Saturday morning we can go to Notre Dame. We're going to be Notre Dame fans now because family comes first.
I love it. He really took ownership of his recruitment, and it sounds like he had such confidence and looked at all aspects. I mean, you guys raised him so beautifully. And it's interesting how the connections form. I understand that with having a couple daughters going through recruiting as well. The coaches recruit very differently. And when they form that connection, you just feel this draw and bonded with them. It's different when a number one school reaches out and gives you an offer, but they're not following up. They're not really getting to know you as a person, and you just don't feel that connection.
Yeah, connection is huge. An interesting development. Tommy Rees then left and now is at Alabama. His person is no longer at Notre Dame. And he went through a whole nother kind of recruiting. Let's see if this is the right fit. Once that happened, it was like starting all over because all these other schools knew how strong that connection was. So now that he's gone, what's the opportunity? So it was like doing it all over again. He got to know the coaches at Notre Dame, the new staff, the new offensive coordinator and the quarterback coach. He took his time. Thank goodness he loves them both. He thinks the world of Coach Freeman too. So Notre Dame, yes, Tommy Rees was a big part of it, but that environment for CJ, he likes the school. He likes the size. He likes big football. He likes good academics. That was important to him. Thank goodness the relationships that came through have become really strong and he's still going there. It was a learning curve, that's for sure.
I love to hear that he found a fit overall, academics, and am I going to be happy here if something does happen and I'm not able to continue in the sport, but this is the place for me. This is where it feels right. It's interesting how our kids keep us so grounded and teach us so much. I've heard a couple times of where CJ has, just like my own daughters, they put us in our place. It's okay. I've got this. And trusting them and the adults that they're growing into. Our kids keep us so grounded. How have you over the years kept your sons grounded with all the expectations that they may have felt or put upon themselves?
I think that my boys have experienced life not in a way I would wish on anyone else. Losing a sibling at a young age and going through that and watching your parents lose a child truly help them develop this sense of knowing what's important and what isn't, not sweating the small stuff and perspective. I think that has really helped to keep them grounded too, because they look at the talents they have as blessings and they appreciate that things can change in an instant. I think that losing Chad had a big impact on both of them and how they are really great kids. They're humble. They know that everything that they've been gifted is from God, and they want to be the leader that gives credit to the teammates around them. They can't do it themselves. They know these things, and they believe that they've got a guardian angel watching over them. They have a different and unique perspective on life that has helped them.
No doubt their perspectives are amazing. I mean, beautiful outlooks and lessons learned in a horrific way, but they take that with them and they're really carving their path in such a light to share with others, to be so appreciative as well, it sounds like.
No doubt. I mean, on CJ's 17th birthday, he wanted to get Chad's name tattooed on his throwing arm. And I have his handwriting on mine because we did it together. Jason's initial reaction was, he's 17 years old. Get him a tattoo? And I'm like, he wants his brother's name on his throwing arm. He said, this is the only thing I will ever put on my throwing arm. He doesn't put wristbands. He doesn't wear anything. Chad's name is it. He lives that. Like, he really believes that he represents him too. Tommy's not as much of a vocal. They're very different in a lot of ways, but Tommy and Chad were best friends. I just think that they know they live their life representing our family, and they have opportunities that their little brother never got. That means a lot to them, and they're going to treat that the way they should.
That was so eloquently put when you break down the fact that they have experienced really the unthinkable. You and Jason have experienced the unthinkable. Your family, all relatives, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, have all really experienced something that no family ever wants to have to go through. And to see the strength that's come out of it, even just through small things. Like you said, he wanted to tattoo his brother's name on his arm and not taint that with anything else, not put a wristband on, not put a sleeve on. That's where he's going to find his strength on those game days. To experience adversity and turn it into strength, your family is exemplary in what every family would hope to be able to do if they experience loss like you have. I just admire your strength. I know Tara admires your strength, and everyone that has ever come into contact with you and your family would feel the same.
I appreciate that. And I think losing a child is something nobody ever thinks is going to happen to them. I never want anyone to understand what that feels like, honestly, because there's nothing that can compare. But people will say to me, oh, I couldn't be as strong as you. Honestly, I used to say that to other people. I don't think I'm that strong. I think I'm just a mom that is doing what she has to do with two other children that I didn't want and Jason didn't want. This experience to forever change them in a negative way. Believe me, I have really bad days. When Chad first passed away, I'll remember Tommy really is the one that shook me, because I remember I was just laying in bed when they were going back to school. I was laying in bed. I wasn't getting up. Tommy, who was 7 at the time, walked in my room, took a shower, came back out, and looked at me and said, "Get up and make me breakfast." And I was like, "Okay, Tammy, you need to get your stuff together because you have 2 other kids that need you." So that's just what I did. And I found a way to continue to honor Chad. And a lot of people helped us with doing that. But first and foremost, it was about the kids we have here and trying to be the best people we can for them so they don't lose their childhood. Because when you go through something like that, that can happen. And I've seen it happen. That was our priority for both of us. And Jason and I, no matter what we do, we learned a lot of lessons too on time management and making sure you're there and not running around like a chicken with your head cut off and missing the moments. We don't miss anything with our kids. We refuse. I look at ChadTough. That's the time I would be spending with Chad if you were here, but that's not going to take away from the time I'm spending with CJ and Tommy. So when they have something, I'm there. So is Jason. We work on ChadTough, and that's the time we'd be with Chad, but we're not going to give up our times with CJ and Tommy. And I think that's helped them to see that we're surviving and they're surviving, and it's not always easy, but you can get up and you can do hard things. And I think that they've seen the ultimate hard thing. So when they go through hard things, they remember that.
Wow. You mentioned ChadTough, the foundation that I'm familiar with, Tara's familiar with. Can you share with us what ChadTough exactly is and how you've been able to create the foundation and what you've done with it thus far?
Yes. When Chad was diagnosed, a lot of people wanted to help and do something. We were just trying to survive at that point and do the best we could for Chad, keep him happy, try to find a cure. We have a lot of families. So what could they do? Well, let's try to do something to change this disease. And so it kind of evolved. This was never our intention to have this huge foundation. It was, we need to do something because DIPG is the brain tumor that took Chad from us. I didn't know this, but brain tumors are the leading cause of cancer death in kids. Who knew? It's accidents and cancer. And then inside cancer, it's brain tumors. And we've come to realize that of the brain tumors, 50% of them every year are DIPG that take kids. That's not insignificant. That's very significant. We said, this is not okay. The protocol that Chad received was almost the same one that Neil Armstrong's daughter received 60 years earlier. You can put him on the moon, but you can't make anything happen in 60 years. Not okay. So we said, we're going to do something. We had this momentum. My father-in-law, had a platform and people cared. So we said, okay, well, let's use this to help this disease change. When we sat in this room and created the ChadTough Foundation, it was myself and my husband and Lloyd. And I remember saying, if we could raise $500,000 a year, that would be incredible for this disease. It has so little. Well, last year we raised almost $7 million, and we are now the largest research foundation for DIPG in the world. That is not our doing. That is a God thing. I've worked in development and fundraising for almost my entire career now. It's hard work, but it hasn't been pulling teeth or twisting arms. And we firmly believe that this was Chad's job. He was put on this earth to change things, and he really is. Believe me, I would give it all up to have him back here. But it's incredible to see the legacy that this little boy and how he really is changing the trajectory for so many generations that are going to come. 5-year-old inspiring people to do so much is a beautiful thing. I am able to find peace from that. I wish it wasn't our reality, but it is. We like to say we follow the bricks that Chad puts in front of us. We've lots of Chad winks, we call them, and we follow them. God's moved us in this direction. We believe it's what we're supposed to be doing. So that's what we're doing.
That is just so beautiful. And the impact that you all have made and that Chad continues and will continue to make forevermore. You're changing so many lives. I see the progress that your funds have been providing for all this research, finding this cure. It's just absolutely incredible. And I love hearing how, as a mom, you just rose to the occasion and you were present for those that are still here. How Tommy was just like, Mom, get it together, a little wake-up call. We're still here, be present for us. And you guys really have been present for them. And you're not forgetting Chad at all. He's always with you, just like all of our loved ones that we've lost. They're always with us. They've taught us things. They're watching over us. It's just so beautiful. have chills listening to you.
Thank you. We talk about him all the time, too. I mean, the boys, we talk about him. He's just part of our lives and always will be. It's not going to change, but we are present for our kids here. And when something happens like that, for Jason and myself, we just wanted them to be okay. We're adults and we're going to have to figure this out for ourselves. But we also are in charge of these other two little beings that have a long life ahead of them. We have to do the best we can for them. That was our priority.
Totally. We remember when the foundation started out with that 5K run. I know Destiny's family and our family was both there, and Chad was honking the horn in the fire truck, and we had the neighborhood garage sales. Fast forward 8 years now, and we see that on the website, it says that the ChadTough Foundation has funded $23 million towards pediatric cancer research. Wow.
Like, we're really just doing what we think we're supposed to be. There was a need. We have 40 family partners from around the world now who don't have to create their own foundations. They work with us and we want to honor their children too. It's not just about Chad and Michael. We've integrated with another foundation. It's about all of these kids. Doctors say they'll find a cure in our lifetime and they wouldn't have said that 8 years ago. So that's a big deal.
Absolutely incredible. Thank you, Chad. Thank you, all of you, and all of these kids that are joining the foundation and the families. Ultimately, what are your hopes and how do you foresee the future of ChadTough now that it has taken off and you've had so much growth and impact?
Yeah, I think that our goal, I tell people we're not going to stop until there's a cure, and we want to do it the best way we can. We have a nurse navigator program now. We fund research, but we want to do something to help the families now. So we have 4 nurses on staff that when a child is diagnosed, they can call them and they will walk them through the journey. They have their cell phone number. It's somebody that they can reach out to because that's something we didn't have. We knew that you could change the family's journey in any way beyond finding the cure, which is going to come, but it's not going to happen tomorrow. Then how can we help? And so we're doing that now, which is incredible. When I look at things, I think continuing to grow to allow families a platform to honor their children and to do something to make an impact without having to reinvent the wheel, that's really important too. It's a lot of work to have a foundation. I did not plan for this to be this. We have a lot of help. We have a staff now. Like, we've taken this in a direction that's sustainable, because once you start getting into that level of things, you can't do it yourself. You know, initially when it started, it was us and some volunteers. And at some point I said, this is not healthy for me mentally. I cannot do this and be the main person focused on this all the time. That was a good decision because now we have an incredible staff that works with us, and they're all mostly moms from this area who were stay-at-home moms and who volunteered with us in the beginning. And now it's about more than money for them, and it's about making an impact. We're so blessed. That's what's going to help us to continue to grow and to make an impact, which is the most important thing, making the biggest impact we can.
I'm picturing this beautiful mirage of you doing communication and then fundraising and all of that. Actually, as much as you are speaking in humility and not taking credit for that, which is so beautiful, Tammi, but at the same time, experiencing what you experienced and being able to do what you've done with the foundation thus far is attributed to you. And highlighting you, I feel so honored. And I know Tara feels so honored to just share your story and your journey. And I love too that every year when I get flyers on my email about the gala and who's hosting it and which family has stepped up to the plate to be sponsors and all of that, I've seen such an influence, taking it full circle again to athletics, and how typically you have a well-known athletic figure or coach or family who steps up and says, this matters and I want to support this family, so I'm going to be the host this year. It helps all of us to see how unifying athletics can be, that even though you've experienced adversity and hardship and loss, athletics can bring so many people together for a common cause. To raise awareness for pediatric brain cancer in the way that you have is so admirable. What advice would you like to share with moms of athletes in that way? How they can bring greater purpose through athletics, or how they can support their athlete for a bigger cause? I know you said you and Jason have been really big in that, and letting your boys be raised to know it's bigger than the basketball court. It's bigger than the football field.
We live with the belief, and we've instilled it in them, that finding a cause that's greater than yourself is extremely important. When you're just focused on you all the time, little things can feel so big. In sports, I think that that's amplified. And what you said too about some things are bigger than a rivalry, they've been able to witness that. When Chad was sick, we had Michigan State spelling his name on the field and Ohio State's basketball coaches putting Christmas lights with Michigan's basketball coaches on a house. I think that they were able to see that athletics, there's power in it, and there's power to make a real impact if you choose to. I respect so much when people with that power and that influence make it a part of their platform and make it important to do something bigger than what they're doing on the field. And we've seen it so much. Moving into next year, one of our co-chairs for our gala is Aiden Hutchinson, number 2 pick in the draft, and he's coming back and being a part of what we're doing. We had Chase Winovich as a student athlete turn his hair orange and ended up raising hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it was just a random idea he had. I tell players, when you find a cause that's greater than yourself and you do something for it, it's going to help you. You're going to gain more from it than you're going to give to it. We've lived that way, and I think our boys understand that. And obviously, we've got ChadTough wrapped up in our whole family. Really, they live it. For moms everywhere, if you can get your kids to give back in some way and really get passionate about something, then it helps them when they do have those moments on the field that aren't as easy. We said earlier, Twitter can be bad and Twitter can be good. You don't want to take too much from the good or the bad, because both of those things, I think, can taint your perspective. Living in that middle ground and not getting too high and not getting too low is important. And I think that when you give back, it helps you to do that.
So powerful. It makes so much sense. Thank you.
You have been such a great example to your children, living the day-to-day life of showing how you find a purpose bigger than yourself and how to go about it, and that it is possible. You're living the life, you're showing by example. And thank you for sharing with all of our sports moms on trying to recognize, on looking beyond and what really matters. And let's try to make an impact on a day-to-day basis. And it doesn't have to be something as huge as, the ChadTough Foundation is incredible, but that might seem daunting to someone. It just has evolved. Anything starts small. Like you mentioned, just started out with you and some mom volunteers and making it happen and how it developed. So thank you for sharing that with all of us.
You never know how one interaction or one moment is going to change the world. The ripple effect from a pebble is real. The impact that you can have by a kind word or a small action, you don't really know the bigger plan. So when you live your life thinking that way, that's teaching your children, and especially athletes. When you look at an environment like a high school, oftentimes these athletes are put on this platform, and how they interact with other kids can have such an impact on their school, on their environment, on these kids' lives. And I am so grateful. Both of my boys, I hear from teachers all the time. They'll go find the kids that nobody talks to. They're kind to everyone. And that's all we've said. You don't have to be friends with everybody, but you have to be kind. And when you are an athlete or high-level athlete and you do things like that, that's the kind of leader you need to be to impact just your own small world. It's not about doing something huge, but just a kind word, a smile, a wave, interacting in any way for some of these kids can change other kids' trajectory. That's just an example of something small that can impact who knows how.
Totally. I love it. Thank you. You spend so much time being a terrific mom to your family and wife to your husband and helping this foundation and bringing awareness and goodness. If you actually have time for yourself, what brings you joy and light?
Honestly, the thing that brings me the most joy are my children. I am going through the time where CJ is going to be leaving in December, and that's going to be a struggle for me. I'm a very present mom. They are my world. It's going to be an interesting transition, that's for sure. I'm leaning on friends who have been there before to help me through that. I remember when I was dropped off at school, it was like, see you at Thanksgiving. Well, having somebody that's going to be playing a sport, I have a reason to be engaged. And I'm so grateful for that, because it's kind of weird if you're not there. Whereas if my parents showed up every other weekend, they would have been like, why are you here? So I feel grateful that at least CJ and hopefully Tommy, but we tell them, if you don't love this, it's a job to play in college. So don't do it unless you know you love it. And CJ, we have no question. Tommy, I think he's on that same path, but we'll see. We'll see what God has in store for him. But my children are my greatest joy. There's no question about that. I have a wonderful group of friends too, and I enjoy spending time with them. I enjoy spending time at the water. Water just brings me peace. I've found that even more so as the last 8 years. For some reason, when I see it, it just brings me peace. So being able to spend time at the water and just relax when I have time and decompress, those are some of the things that bring me joy.
It's just surrounding yourself with family and friends, specifically a good group of friends who are going to lift you up on hard days and laugh on the fun days. I have a dear friend who feels the same peace around water. She just said, it is 100% affirmed I need to be around water and make it a point, whether it's a natural stream or going to a state park or where there's ponds and oceans and beaches. Water gives her such peace.
Yeah, it's a real thing. It really is. I have to live on water soon. It's coming.
We were talking about that actually yesterday. We were seeing some dew on some grass, and it's so beautiful. And we were thinking about how we just love water, and maybe it's because it's so necessary. It's just a need.
That's a good point.
So our brains find it beautiful.
Water is life.
It is. There is something with it. I embrace it. And Jason and I feel the exact same way. So that'll be sooner than later.
Well, we would love for anyone who's listening to the podcast to be able to keep up with you, not only you, but also with the foundation and all the goings on. Can you share with us your social media or any website links?
The ChadTough Foundation is chadtough.org. We're active on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter as well. So that's a great way to keep up. My personal, I'm Tammi Carr on Facebook and Instagram as well, TamCarr21. I don't share as much as I used to, but when I move, I share.
Well, I'm hoping this podcast can bring further awareness to the ChadTough Foundation, and anyone wanting to support can definitely reach out to you directly or to the organization. Thank you.
For sure.
Thank you for sharing so many stories and inspiring us.
Absolutely.
I think moms supporting moms is a great thing. And women, we have a lot of impact on this world. And moms, we're raising the next generation of leaders. And I think that what you're doing is great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Tammi.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
We're so glad you've joined us today. Thank you for listening. Upcoming episodes and show info can all be found at sportsmomrapport.com. If you've enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend. We'd love to hear from you, so please reach out to us with any comments or if you or someone you know would like to share their story and connect with us.